Please be outstanding. The Worshipful the Mayor of Merton, Councillor, Mayor Curry. Silence, the deacon condiver, who will now call the prayers.
Lord our God, look with love on the people of this community and keep them safe in your service. Guide the members of this council and help them to work together for the good of all. Bless their plans and their deliberations and bring them to success. Father, we ask this grace through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please remain standing. We shall now observe a minute's silence for the late Reverend Dr. John Mulligan, who was the late chaplain.
Please be seated. Good evening, everyone. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, Madam Mayor, apologies from Councillor Butler.
Yes, Madam Mayor, from Councillor Thomas Barlow, who members might like to know is away on his holiday. Madam Mayor, apologies from Councillor Quilliam, who is on his honeymoon.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Are the minutes of the last meeting held on the 4th of July and the 12th of July? Are they agreed? Does the leader and chief executive have any announcements?
No, Madam Mayor, not from me. Not from me.
The next item is the public questions. You see in front of Sorry. Just update you on what I've been doing since I got elected as mayor on the 23rd of May. Geraldine and I have done over 70 engagements and 9 citizenship ceremonies we've been at. I'd like to thank everyone that supported the summer cabaret event on July the 20th. Over £1,100 was raised towards the Mayor's charities. Thank you also to Councillor Edith McCauley, who has raised £1,200 from her annual sponsored swim. Thank you, Edith. And staff member Paul Miles from Future Merton, who participated in the 100 Miles Prudential Ride London event and raised over £1,000 for the Mayor's charity. So thank you, Paul. We've got some upcoming events, some charity events. We've got Murder Mystery Night event to be held on Saturday, the 29th of September at the Chapter House, Merton Priory. Tickets are on sale at £50 and can be had from the Mayor's office. That includes the meal. On Sunday, the 7th of October, we're again doing Silver Sunday afternoon tea for over 55 in the borough. That's between 3 and 5 p.m. at the Hall in Bishopsford Road. Other planned events, Christmas dinner on the 1st of December, more information later. We've got a charity pantomime, Jack and Beanstalk, in Newell Theatre on the 11th of December. Tuesday the 18th of December, we've got Christmas Carol service, 7:30 at the Sacred Heart Church, Wimbledon. And we've got dates and places for other carol singing activities across the borough, different stations and other churches. In the new year, we start off with the London New Year's Day Parade on Tuesday the 1st of January. The theme of the 2019 is London Welcomes the World. Our entry is being organised by the Deputy Mayor, Geraldine Stanford. Thank you, Geraldine. Towards the end of January, we've got Burns Night event, which we'll let you know more details later. February, there's a quiz night based on Merton's heritage for staff and councillors. The venue here is at the Civic Centre. On the 16th of March, of course, we've got the Irish Centre. We've got an Irish night at the Irish Centre. So I hope you'll have a good night there. Then, as we look to close out the year, we have the Charity Ball returns to the All England on Saturday, the 27th of April. So, thank you, that's my announcements. Any announcements from... The next item is the public questions. You see in front of you a list of the 25 questions raised by members of the public. And answers have been provided by the appropriate cabinet member. Each questioner now has the right to ask a further supplementary question. Please make your questions brief in nature and not a statement. I will call each person's name in turn based on the order in which the questions were received. If you wish to ask a supplementary question, please indicate to me clearly, and I will ask you to come forward and to the seat, and where is marked public questions in front of the public gallery. We will get through as many as we can within 15 minutes allowed. Questioners and councillors, please note that your microphones will be operated for you. Please speak clearly into the microphones. So we have, firstly, we have Alan Thurston. Is Alan Thurston present? Tom Killick. Is Tom Killick present? Do Do we have Barry Smith?
Present, but no further questions.
Do we have Sandra Vogel? Clara J. Dresselers.
Present, but no further questions.
John Davis. Tony Burton. Rosemary Davis. Tamar Cllr. Samaya Anijad. Shipra Gupta.
Yes, but no further questions at the moment.
Joyce Pountain. Ingrid Dickinson. John Tippett Cooper. Philip Ling. Richard Shillito. Philippa Maslin. Chris Stanton. Andrew Boyce. Richard Schmidt. Vincent Bolt. Nicola Thompson. Emily Robertson. Rachel Wyatt. Emma Madison. We will now move to item 6, Councillors' questions to Cabinet members. I will read out each member's name in the order they appear in the supplementary agenda and invite you to ask a supplementary question. Please ensure all supplementary answers are brief in nature and not a statement, and we will get through as many as possible in 15 minutes. Firstly, Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the Cabinet member for her reply. Now that the new term is started, is the Cabinet member able to update us on the new intake at Harris Wimbledon at Watley Avenue?
Thank you very much, Councillor Pearce. I am delighted to report that 128 children got admissions into Harris Wimbledon, and the first day was last week, Thursday. I called and congratulated them on opening, and since then, I think in fact today an officer actually visited the school and reported back that they are all settling in well. So, you know, we're very pleased, we're very delighted, and parents are all very delighted as well. And whilst I'm on the topic of Harris, can I also use this opportunity to congratulate Harris Morden for being offset inspected and being outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I also thank the Cabinet member for his response. Over the last 5 financial years, over £5.6 million in council tax has not been collected. Will he accept this is not good enough? And what actions will he take to improve the performance of his department in the future?
I'd like to thank the member for his follow-up, but you may have missed the written response, which outlines that the collection rates in Merton over the last few years have been a record high for this borough, considerably better than they were when the Conservatives were running the council. And it's very important to stress that a lot of hard work has gone in by our staff to make it easier for people to pay their council tax and to improve the rates of collection. And I think we should all in here applaud them for achieving a record level of collection of 97.69%, a collection rate that is the best on record ever in Merton under Labour.
Councillor Making? Councillor Andrew Howard?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, well, thank the Cabinet Member for his reply. I do have a supplementary, which is that since June of 2016, Merton Council has installed 44 ANPR and bus lane cameras, which have issued over 180,000 tickets, costing motorists over £12 million. Will he accept that the lack of clear signage has caused unsuspecting motorists to be hit by the fines, and will he apologise for this?
I'd like to thank Councillor Howard for his supplementary. No, I won't apologise for the fact that if anyone is dissatisfied with being issued with a fine, they do have the right to appeal, and there is also an independent appeal available as well. In terms of traffic enforcement and ANPR, it is right that we do enforce people going into bus lanes or taking illegal turns or traffic movements. That is correct, and I believe that Merton Council is doing this in the right and correct way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCarry?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the reply from the Leader of the Council. Whilst recognising Merton's decision, people locally are concerned about the recent decision of Wimbledon Labour Party not to back the full IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which brings a national issue firmly to our doorstep. What is the Leader's response to this and the abuse that some of Merton's councillors have received on Twitter over this issue?
I thank Councillor Bakari for her supplementary. As I stated in my written response, and as we'll be discussing the IHRA definition and its adoption by this council, we as Merton Council, we as the Labour Group Merton Council, are completely and utterly committed to zero tolerance approach to Islamophobia, to anti-Semitism, and it is important not to politicise this issue but to remain strong, to remain united against any kind of tolerance to Islamophobia or anti-Semitism, so that we remain a borough that is completely and utterly against all forms of discrimination.
Councillor Cowper?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. How does the Council ensure any special needs of the families in the community sponsorship programmes are met?
Thank you, Councillor Cowper, for your supplementary question. And I would like to reassure you that the Council worked very closely with schools and hospitals to ensure that we meet their needs and requirements on the community sponsorship, and we are endeavouring to continue to do so all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a supplementary, and I thank the Cabinet Member for his response. If I'm the first complainant, I will be rather surprised, but it seems to me if you're saying there's only been one thus far. I certainly won't be the last, I can assure you. So, it is right, sorry. So will the Cabinet Member please explain why under this Labour administration it continues to be fine to restrict parking in wholly residential areas, but take little or no action on roads designated for buses and heavy lorries like Martin Way, which have more and more heavy traffic?
I'd like to thank Councillor Simpson for his supplementary question in relation to obstructive parking and enforcement. This council is very diligent in terms of our enforcement, and where a traffic offence has arisen, we will actually take the necessary action that is needed, though obviously Councillor Howard earlier thought that we're too severe. But I can say to you, as a council, we do take action. If there is issues with obstructive parking, we look into it and have necessary consultations about further controls that we can actually put in place. We do want to keep our roads flowing freely, and we will undertake the action which is needed. Thank you.
We are now on item 7, the strategic theme of sustainable communities. We will begin with the Councillors' strategic theme questions, and I will follow the same procedure as with the previous item. So firstly, Councillor Akagina.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for his response. And I'd like to ask what work has been done on public engagement to filter through this vital information on recycling as part of the new scheme.
I'd like to thank Councillor Akagina for the supplementary question. We have had extensive public engagements regarding the rollout of the new service. There were 900 people attended the 5 roadshows in total, and I personally have been invited by ward councillors, by residents' associations to go and speak, and I was totalling up before this meeting, and it comes to about 1,000 people that I've seen at those meetings. So we're on to 2,000. I know the Councillor Welton hosted one in his ward, and there were 300 to 400 people there as well. So the level of public engagement and the discussion about the need to recycle more and have cleaner streets has been extensive. So I'm delighted to announce that.
Councillor Adam Bush.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I start by thanking the Cabinet Member for his response? Since 2010, the recycling target has never been hit, and recycling levels have fallen over the last council. Is this poor performance why he has had to hand over control of recycling back to Veolia? Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to thank Councillor Bush for his supplementary question. Merton has not been performing as well on recycling in some areas as it could do. I'm fully aware of that. I think I announced at a previous meeting that compared with Sutton, we recycle about 3 kilograms of food waste per household per month. Sutton is at 7.5 kilos for a service they only started just over a year ago. So I'm very optimistic that we will, working in partnership with Veolia, we will achieve a much higher collection rate. Sutton, for all its teething problems last year, is now, they announced at the South London Waste Partnership meeting last night, that they believe they've got to 50% across all recycling now. And that's a tremendous improvement for them. We need to be out there evangelising recycling. And I think that I would encourage all members of the council, as I know they do, to talk to their ward residents about recycling, and together we'll see that success. So we've not handed over anything to Veolia, we're working in partnership with them.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the Cabinet Member for your full reply. My supplementary is a simple question. Will you meet the first-year target?
In terms of the target is extremely challenging at the moment, but it's only part of the draft London plan. We have argued that we have delivered 650 homes the last year. It's a very stretched target. Clearly, we are currently in negotiation with the GLA, and we have made representations going forward. You know, we want to maximise the amount of housing provided in Merton, but we're not overrun with brownfield sites compared to some other boroughs. But we do need to get buildings. We do need to have higher densities on our sites, because we have a huge housing crisis here in Merton, and as Cabinet Member, I am determined to tackle that housing crisis. Thank you.
Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for his reply and ask him, following on from his answer, that where he says it's extremely challenging to pursue fly tippers, can he please describe this process?
like to thank Councillor Kelly for her supplementary question. It's not as straightforward as you think, fining people for fly tipping, because you need to get the evidence. So we do have cameras, and recently we identified 22 people fly tipping on Streatham Road at the recycling centre on Fixed March. And even despite those prosecutions, it still continued there, but it was coming down. I went out with one of our enforcement officers last week, and it involves going into black bags that are found around the streets. And what we were doing was ripping them open, looking for address labels, anything that was in there, photographing that, and then taking the address. Those people are written to, they're invited into the Civic Centre to have a conversation about how their rubbish ended up in another street or on someone else's property. So we do pursue that. In the past I've never been a name and shame sort of person, but I'm getting to the point where I think we will need to be naming and shaming and really revealing who the culprits are openly, because it will go through courts. And if it's in the court's domain, then it's in the public domain. And Merton will pursue people if we have the evidence, and we'll follow it through. And I believe that we will be successful in bringing that down. Fly tipping is a national epidemic. Everywhere you go, there's more fly tipping around. Maybe it's the success of schemes like the landfill tax and the like, but people are looking for a cheap way out. We all have a responsibility as well. When someone offers to come and take your rubbish away from your front garden for £50, then they can't possibly be disposing it for £50 or £100. We need to see their licence. So ask for that as a resident, and encourage your residents to do that as well. Thank you.
Councillor Breton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, my question relates to air quality and the impact on children and young people in our borough. Specifically, Madam Mayor, the Mayor of London, I know it doesn't fill people with a great deal of confidence nowadays when we speak of the current Mayor of London, Madam Mayor, but he's intending to carry out a school air quality audit at Merton Abbey School this November, Madam Mayor. Merton Abbey School, which is a school that means a lot to us all. And will the Cabinet Member responsible for adult social care and health apologise for his failings to date to address the air pollution that surrounds the local area around the school? Will he explain why he has failed to allocate Section 106 monies and SIL monies to properly address the problem, which is long outstanding and overdue, Madam Mayor?
Could you just repeat the first part of that question? Because it's quite a
Certainly. So about the Mayor of London, was it?
About the Mayor of London.
Okay. Will he apologise for the failings to address the air pollution problem in the vicinity of Hyde Park and the school?
Will I apologise?
I'll repeat it again if you'd like.
There was a bit about a school before that, which that's the bit I missed. Well, no, I won't apologise. We've got a very ambitious air quality action plan, which was detailed in the answer to the original question, with a number of very ambitious measures. And in the past, when we've sought to introduce those measures, such as the diesel levy, his party has opposed those. And it is measures like that that will improve air quality for children. So I hope, as we look to introduce further measures in the air quality action plan, his passion and enthusiasm for air quality will rub off on his colleagues.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for his response. I'm pleased to see that the use of glyphosate is under review. I do note that under current UK and EU law it's classed as legal. Against that, I'd ask him to note the World Health Organization has branded it as, quotes, probably carcinogenic to humans, and we must all, I'm sure, be aware of the award of punitive damages against Monsanto of $289 million just a few weeks ago. In the process of reviewing our contractor's use of glyphosate, can I ask him to take a look at what Hammersmith and Fulham are doing with the use of innovative chemical-free alternatives, particularly foams, as a much safer alternative to glyphosate?
Thank you, and I'd like to thank Councillor Southgate for his supplementary question. We take the health and safety of all the people that are giving out delivering the weed killer to the streets and the people living in the area seriously. So that's why we've been following and monitoring the advice that's been given. I'm more than happy to look into what a fellow Labour councillor is doing in London successfully, and if it does work, then getting our officers to look at that. But I'm sure that it's been considered in the array of options in the past. But times change and new evidence comes to light, and we need to always keep that under review. I take the point.
Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to thank the Cabinet member for his reply. It seems to me that as well as electric car vehicles, car clubs and car sharing are good ways of reducing the number of cars on our streets. What schemes are there in Merton?
I'd like to thank Councillor Henry for her supplementary. Merton has been at the forefront of rolling out car club schemes over the past few years. It's something actually we do want to encourage, alongside electric charging points and electric vehicles. And that's why we have reduced permit charges in terms of electric vehicles. As an authority, we do want to see more rolled out across the borough. We do want to reduce emissions. It's something we take extremely seriously here in this council, and I'm confident that over the next few years we'll even see more coming to the fore in this borough, because to date many have worked very successfully, and I have no doubt we will continue to see car clubs, but also as well electric cars grow in this borough. Thank you.
Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'd like to thank the Cabinet member for his answer. Well, I'd like to ask, I often hear the Cabinet member talk about building communities, but for a small sum of money he can change his mind here simply because he is destroying a community. Tens of thousands of boys and girls have played Little League, and many of them will never be able to do it again. So my simple question to our Cabinet member is when is he going to start practising what he preaches?
Hear, hear.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful to Councillor Dean for his supplementary question of sorts. There was something in there somewhere. I'm actually quite glad that Councillor Dean told us at the last council meeting that as a child he was in the Little League growing up in Carshilton in the London Borough of Sutton, because London Borough of Sutton do charge for their Little Leagues pitches and have done so for a very considerable period of time. And I have to say that I haven't as yet heard of any tales of deprivation coming out of caused by Sutton's actions, which rather goes against what his supplementary question said. But in fact, at the last council meeting, if he remembers, I did ask our fellow Lib Dem members if they could liaise with their fellows in Sutton, and I've heard nothing from them since. But if they, or Councillor Dean you, can provide me with any conclusive evidence that Sutton's children are substantially missing out as per your supplementary question, I'll take that into account when revising the policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fairclough.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the leader for his rather detailed answer on the nature of Crossrail 1 and 2. I note that the leader says that charging additional council tax is an idea that has to be considered. So I just wanted to check that he is in fact opposed to the idea of charging people who live within 3 kilometres of Crossrail 2 stations additional council tax. And if so, what does he plan to do to show that opposition? Thank you.
I thank Councillor Fairclough, who's asked exactly the same question as a supplementary as his original question. Therefore, the written answer retains. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a supplementary. I thank the Cabinet member for his answer, and can you please reassure me that residents will continue to be engaged with us as the regeneration of Morden Town Centre takes place?
I'd like to thank Councillor Attawar for her supplementary question on Morden regeneration. As we start to work up Morden during the autumn and go to the market next year, of course, engagement with residents will absolutely be essential, and that's a key component of the project. To take Morden to delivery, we'll see a transformation of the town centre, nearly 2,000 new homes, but also as well improving the public infrastructure and the public realm in the town centre to ensure that it's an attractive place to live, work and learn. And I have no doubt that we will see Morden start to come to fruition over the lifetime of this administration, and I look forward to engaging with residents on that. Thank you.
Councillor Morden.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to thank the Cabinet Member for his answer, or detailed answer. I'll have a simple question. Under what circumstances will the Labour Council, and the Cabinet Member in particular, bin the Spain-in street cleaning contract to Veolia?
I'd like to thank Councillor Holden, who did warn me that he was going to come up with a supplementary question. He attended the South London Waste Partnership last night. We have a contract that we need to make sure it works, and we need to enforce it. To start from scratch, can you imagine the dilemma and the mess that would throw the whole and the cost and the waste of money to do that? It's much better for us to work with what we're doing now. I have been out with our client officers. I report streets below par regularly. I've probably become the bane of the department's life in the number of reports I put in. And it's only through monitoring and pushing that we will actually get to be able to deliver to the contracts that they have signed and we have signed. And that is the best way to get cleaner streets in Merton.
Councillor Christie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks to the Cabinet Member for his response. Could I ask him what further concerns he has about the rollout of the universal credit?
I'd like to thank you for his follow-up question. I think most of us on this side, although we're really not fans of Ian Duncan-Smith or the government of now, I think we all hoped that it might work with the principles, the universal credit, with the principles of ensuring that everybody gets the benefits that they need, that nobody loses out compared to where they were before, and also to ensure that people who are in work are actually better off as a result of working. However, 8 years into this programme, and 8 years into an austerity government, we have to be clear that the universal credit is an absolute shambles, and it is causing pain, misery and penury for hundreds, if not thousands, of our local residents, and we should be ashamed of what is happening. He asked what my concerns are, and there are so many. But I guess for me the most heartbreaking cases are of people with learning difficulties who can't apply, don't know how to apply, aren't given the support that they need when there are changes of circumstances. People with no access to the IT that they need to make the changes, who are put into terrible, terrible debt as a result of their government's actions, and people with mental health issues who are struggling so much with the depression that's caused by being in such a financial position that their situation gets worse and worse and worse. And it is a crying shame that here we stand in 2018 in one of the richest countries in the world, at the richest point that the world has ever been, and that people are in this condition in Merton, in this fantastic city of London. We should all be ashamed, and I hope that they will do what they can to get that system working, because it hasn't been, and you've let us down.
That was the final question, members' question. Please note the remaining member questions and answers will be circulated after the meeting in line with constitutional requirements. We move now to 7B. We are now going to deal with the strategic theme main report. I'm going to invite the cabinet member to present and then seek a seconder. I will then invite any members that wish to speak on the main report to do so. Finally, we will then vote on the main report. Councillor President, please present the strategic theme report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I formally move the report. As the summer sun fades, the nights grow longer and the leaves start to fall, we can start to reflect on what this Labour Council has successfully achieved this year and what we plan to do following our re-election in May. To start with, Mitcham. Last month we successfully marked the completion of the £7 million Rediscover Mitcham project, with the Deputy Mayor for Transport, Heidi Alexander, and yourself, Madam Mayor, unveiling a plaque to mark the completion of the public rail works in Mitcham, the U bus lane which brings buses back to the heart of Mitcham, and the restoration of the historic clock tower. These works have not been easy and have taken place over a number of years, but I would like to thank the officers for their work and councillors in the area for their support. Work has also got underway with the new stadium for AFC Wimbledon, with the Dons finally coming home to the London Borough of Merton after over 25 years out of the borough. Alongside the stadium, we're also seeing over 650 new homes being delivered, and thanks to the work of the Council and the Mayor of London, we're also seeing the share of affordable homes go up to over 30%. Recently I met with two housing associations involved, Catalyst and Wandle, to discuss their plans for the site and delivering the affordable element. We have also seen earlier this year the approval of a £1.2 billion regeneration of High Path, Ravensbury and Eastfields, which will provide huge benefits to the residents there and the wider community in Merton by providing 2,800 new homes to these areas, alongside a new home for every existing freehold and leasehold tenant at no additional costs, with its benefits extending far beyond new homes and facilities through the provision of over 700 construction jobs, training and apprenticeship opportunities. This was the largest single regeneration project approved in Merton Council's history. Next month we will also see a brand new swimming pool delivered in Morden, a project delivered under a Labour administration. But as a council, we don't rest on our laurels. We are moving ahead with the next stages in the regeneration of Morden and delivery of over 2,000 new homes, alongside the transformation of the town centre, which will see public realm improvements. We will also see the selection of a preferred development partner in the spring of 2020. Now I know people say, why hasn't work started already, and what is happening? But in response, this is an incredibly complex project involving TfL and dozens of different landowners, which we will need to work with to deliver the project and may require compulsory purchase. We need to get this right, and I'm confident we will. But it will be a project that takes place over a number of years, and I'm confident that work will start by 2021, and it remains one of my top priorities as Cabinet Member. As a council, we are also going to publish our draft local plan in the autumn, which will set the planning framework for the borough alongside our development policies. Our call for sites has also seen a number of submissions made of sites as we work towards delivering more homes in the borough. At the end of the year, we will also be launching a housing strategy. We'll look at how we can deliver more homes in Merton, look at the range of housing needs here in Merton, including demand, tenure of homes, and the type of housing we need to meet a wide range of needs. We have a housing crisis in this borough, with over 9,000 people on our waiting list, and costs beyond for many people living here in Merton. We also need more homes for social rent and to address the overcrowding that many families suffer from. Our housing needs team does great work in housing people with temporary housing, which is still the lowest in London Borough, but it's still 180 too many. To conclude, we have many great things to be proud of as a council, but I am only too well aware of the challenges. But we are driven and determined to deliver as a Labour administration, committed as a council to the many, not the few. Thank you.
This has been formally seconded by Councillor Ellen Brittis.
Yes, Madam Mayor, a commanding speech from someone in command of their brief. I won't say any more. I second.
I have the following listed to speak. Councillor Bush.
Madam Mayor, it's a privilege to be standing in front of you tonight, making my maiden speech as a newly elected Conservative councillor for the Rains Park Ward. As someone who was born and raised in the area, I was deeply honoured and humbled by the amount of residents who voted for me. I'd like to pay tribute to former Councillor Jill West, who did a terrific job for the community in her time. I'm sure she'll be enjoying retirement, and no doubt she'll be in weekly contact with me over bins not being collected and streets not being cleaned. Madam Mayor, it is also a pleasure to be working alongside Councillor Stephen Crowe, who has also been a great mentor to me over the years, and Councillor Adam Bush, who has been my parents' favourite and constant older brother fame in my life, only very good. However, I promise I'll show more loyalty than Ed Miliband showed his brother. Madam Mayor, I thank the officers for their work for tonight's report. The report states that the aim of tonight's council theme of sustainable communities, as outlined by the Merton Partnership, is to create a more sustainable borough. And Madam Mayor, who could not support this? However, the reality of the last 8 years of Labour control is a council that is moving backwards and has sensibly squandered the strong position it was left in 2010. I'm sure even Kevin Keegan couldn't have squandered such a strong position. Madam Mayor, this is an administration that has failed to hit its own targets for recycling. They lowered them and they still failed to hit them. Only Merton Labour sees this as an achievement. Madam Mayor, this is an administration that has failed to run a waste collection service, then outsourced it to Veolia, whose disastrous performance has led to piles of rubbish rotting on our streets. This is a council whose financial mismanagement has led to them penalising the poorest in our borough, shamefully charging children to use our borough's parks for little leagues. Madam Mayor, only this administration could think that this is businesslike. The report about the increased housing target in the draft London plan, which has more than tripled the amount of houses that the council must deliver every year. And it's time for the administration to tell the people of Merton how it intends to meet the challenges that this increase in housing will place on schools, hospitals and GP surgeries, rather than continually trying to shift the blame for inadequate mismanagement of taxpayers' money. The council talks about its regeneration of Morden town centre. However, money has been poorly spent, with regeneration now stalling and residents still being affected by poor levels of air quality and pollution. The report has stated that it is the borough's aim to reduce the impact of CO2 and climate change. Well, the stats provided are clear, and they do not relate to air quality outside Merton Abbey School, where air quality has been so poor that the dangerously high levels of pollution will receive the Mayor of London's school air quality audit in November. Madam Mayor, fly tipping is not only a serious concern in my ward, but in all wards across Merton. The amount of fly tipping occurring on a weekly basis is not acceptable for residents in Merton. Madam Mayor, I believe that our residents will feel that continuing with this failed Labour administration is unsustainable for our community and dump them at the next election. Thank you.
Councillor Fairclough.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report before us is largely about the past, sort of brief summaries of what's been done, but it's somehow less than the sum of its 34 paragraphs. The priorities, as Councillor Bush has already mentioned, of the Sustainable Communities and Transport Partnership are set out at the start of the report, as well as the ambitions for the Sustainable Communities theme. And at least there is an attempt in the report to map the actions taken to the priorities, but it's difficult to tell how and if the administration believes the services outlines meet those priorities, or much less what still needs to be done. The Cabinet member talked about what we plan to do. Well, reading this report, you can't really tell. Now, we've already heard from Councillor Bush's forceful maiden speech about waste management, and I'm sure we'll hear a bit more on that later. There's going to be an entire debate focused on it, at which point you'll all have the pleasure of hearing me speak again. Look forward to that. In a few minutes, And obviously there have been a number of strategic themed questions. So tonight, Madam Mayor, I wanted to take 2 examples from the transport aspect of this theme, but also touch on public health. And I want to ask the Cabinet members if they want to use their opportunity to reply, to tell us what they plan to do in the future to fulfil these priorities. Now, my group has long been advocates of improving air quality through reduced traffic and congestion. We've supported improved cycling facilities, better public transport and living streets. We've got a plan to get us out of here. Now, the administration's diesel levy was launched with great fanfare last year, mentioned tonight as well, and yet it's not mentioned in this report at all. Prior to the surcharge, something like 34% of all parking permits were issued to diesel vehicles. The diesel levy is apparently intended to improve air quality by cutting the number of vehicles, but it's only because I happen to be a member of the Sustainable Community Scrutiny Panel that I know that there are no plans to look at the scheme's effectiveness until it's been in place for 3 years. And perhaps worse, there won't be any decisions, Madam Mayor, on how to assess the scheme until then either. The previous Cabinet member said I would consider any shift away from polluting vehicles as a success. Well, perhaps it's difficult, if not impossible, to define success here, but will we know it when we see it? Given that air pollution is a public health emergency, what other options for improving air quality have been considered? And why have they been rejected as against the administration's current activities? Lastly, Madam Mayor, a couple of times we've heard rumours of a manifesto commitment for more 20-mile-per-hour zones, and yet there's scant evidence here of any ambition or any plan. Back in 2012, Merton's Liberal Democrat councillors proposed a borough-wide default 20-mile-an-hour speed limit on residential roads. Now, this is recognised by a wide variety of groups, such as the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents. It has various safety benefits, encourages walking and cycling, it's easy to understand, and if there are collisions, it reduces the risk of serious harm or injuries. But by limiting the need for acceleration and braking, it reduces fuel consumption and therefore CO2 emissions. We've rejected 2012.
Thank you. There are no further speakers. Councillor Belton, do you wish to use your right to reply?
Yes, Madam Mayor, just obviously a few points I'd like to touch on. I'd like to congratulate Councillor Bush on an eloquent, amazing speech to Council. Obviously, he made a number of points. I just touched obviously in relation to the parts in relation to my portfolio. One of them was in relation to the draft housing targets. At the same time, we're saying we're having very challenging housing targets here in Merton. The Secretary of State, James Brockenshire, saying to the Mayor of London that they're not enough, that he even wants more housing to be built. Now, I don't know where we're going to find all the sites. We've had an extensive call for sites in this borough. Many have come forward to date. But it's right that there is obviously supporting infrastructure. You know, housing is one thing, but you need to improve actually the public realm in the area. So that's why it's a key component of Morden, but also as well bringing the businesses to the area and making it an attractive place to invest. We touch on transport, and I'd obviously like to thank Councillor Fairclough for his comments. In terms of tram, there's a tram link consultation starting next month for options to bring the trams to Sutton. So Transport for London are leading on that, but also we're working alongside that. Crossrail 2, unfortunately, has been stalled by the government for the last 2 years. We do hope to see it proceed soon, because I think it is actually desperately needed. We know the huge capacity issues going in to Waterloo each day, and they do need to be tackled. In terms of 20-mile-per-hour zones, I am in favour of 20-mile-per-hour zones, and hopefully during the course of this administration we will roll out 20-mile-per-hour zones across the borough, so 20 is going to be plenty. Thank you.
We will now consider the first strategic theme motion. Councillor Morden, please present the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move in this concerted motion tonight. This issue of street cleanliness in Merton is at the forefront of residents' minds, and also along with this Labour administration's disastrous introduction of wheelie bins and fortnightly collections. I would like all members in this chamber tonight to accept this friendly motion. It It's been drafted to be reasonable and tailor-made to bring together Conservatives, our Liberal friends, your Labour backbenchers, Stephen, and independents. But more importantly, this new subcommittee or public board would actively include residents, resident groups, charities and local businesses. I would call it Merton Street Cleanliness Advisory Board, or SCAB for short. For this SCAB to work, it will require Veolia and the Labour Cabinet member, Councillor Blunt, to work with everyone involved in this new committee. It would seek to advise and guide the Cabinet member and help improve street scene matters for all the residents of Merton, and to work for better solutions in street cleaning and waste management. This new board will be open, transparent and honest. It does not seek to punish the Cabinet member or even the Council leader. In fact, the Cabinet member would have a better time of it, instead of being continually cross-examined and heckled as he was last week in the Main Sustainable Communities Scrutiny Committee. This new board will be right up the Liberal street, for they continually speak of cross-party working and partnerships. I say to you, the Liberals, do back us tonight, do the right thing for the residents of Merton and support us on this motion. Madam Mayor, I truly believe this is a good way for this council to alleviate the negative image and dodgy public perception it has acquired over recent times. It will go some way to amend the disastrous approach by this Labour administration on waste management. It would buy in the public who value truth and honesty. This new board should be empowered to make recommendations which the Cabinet member will be wise to accept. It will be collegiate in nature. And I'll give you a scenario of how it would work as an example. Veolia street cleaners currently leave green sacks piled up high at certain locations in the borough, and they leave them for many days at a time, such as outside St Mary's Church in Merton Park Ward. So the panel members would ask, why do this? Is there a better location? Why has Veolia become the licensed fly tippers of Merton? All this could be dealt with by this new board. Perhaps after continuing failure by Veolia, this new board would recommend alternative working practices, alternative locations for these green sacks, or they could even offer financial deductions or fines to Veolia, as they're more commonly known as. It could even recommend scrapping the contract altogether. So, Madam Mayor, here's a clever part of this new board. Being cross-party, cross-resident, including businesses and charity, it can make the ideas and recommendations to allow the Cabinet member to make the right decision to save face for this Labour administration. Council and Business, you could undo this rolling disaster and then get all the credit for listening, for being open and for being transparent. Imagine that, you might enjoy it. Madam Mayor, I invite all members here tonight to vote for this motion. It is a no-brainer. Thank you very much.
This has been seconded by Councillor Dean.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I do second this motion. I stood here just before Labour politicians were about to sign their secret deal with Veolia, and I said, you are going to ruin the streets of Merton, filling them up with filth. You're going to cut the street cleaning budget, you're going to cut street cleaners and shove monies from that budget into waste collection because of your obsessive weirdness of wanting to enforce wheelie bins on the poor burghers of Merton. Now, the previous Cabinet member for rubbish, now done a runner, smiled arrogantly, stating that the streets would be cleaner under his tutelage, and we Conservatives should stop whinging. Well, the facts are there for all to see in our borough. Rats abound in South Wimbledon, rubbish is strewn in front of monuments to the dead in Merton Park, bundles of bags pile up in the test case ward, Lavender Fields, and Labour members carry on smirking and lording over the people of Merton. We clean the streets, Madam Mayor. We clean the filth. In return, Labour do nothing to change the situation. And why does this Labour Council not penalise fly tippers? Less than any boroughs. Is it incompetence? Absolutely, yes. But the fact is, this council is the biggest fly tipper in this borough. It is the council itself, the lords of this manor, performing like Greek gods, ignoring the rules, acting illegally. And so, to the secret contract, hidden behind the name of the South London Waste Partnership, run by officers in this borough, in the walls of this building, but purporting to be an external body, refusing all efforts of transparency. We can't see the contract, they said. We can't change the contract, they said. But surprise, surprise, the contract is being reviewed. Now, it's a secret to us, but is it because the contractor wants even more money for the shoddy work that's taking place on our streets today? Now, it's not all doom and gloom with Labour. On the Conservative side, we know there's always a better way. Put simply, any person with common sense would agree that all public contracts should be transparent and available. Street cleaning, to prevent disease, should be conducted frequently, weekly, we say. And recycling should be the goal of waste collection, not ugly monuments to failing Labour politicians. As Councillor Holden quite rightly said, it's time to set up a task force, a committee, to rid this borough of the contract. It's time to run Veolia out of this town, along with the secret South London Waste Partnership. And it's time to say goodbye to a cabinet member who doesn't listen, doesn't care, and doesn't deliver. Madam Mayor, thank you very much.
We have two amendments. We will take each amendment in the order in which they were received. They were submitted. Councillor Fairclough.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to see that since July, the Conservative councillors have come around to the idea of a task group focusing on a serious issue to work out a serious problem. I also appreciate the collegiate approach of both Councillor Holden and Councillor Dean there. Madam Mayor, this is a friendly amendment, and I hope our Conservative colleagues take it in the spirit it's intended. I agree with Councillor Holden. We're listening to what you say, even though we look the other way. We want to strengthen the motion and tie up a few areas of vagueness. We want to avoid establishing just yet another place to complain about Veolia. We don't need it, we all know it, we all see it, whatever side of the chamber we sit on. What we need is something with some teeth, something really focused on the issues that our constituents care about. And so this is our attempt to do that. So the first bit is a bit of a technical amendment. We want to tighten the motion by making it a scrutiny task group instead of a subcommittee. Now the reason for that is the point of a task group is to carry out in-depth and detailed work, bring recommendations to the panel and from there to Cabinet and bring change. A task group can co-opt individuals to join it, gather evidence from anyone it wants, and as per the amendment it would meet in public and be open and transparent. A task group is not tied to the legal rules on proportionality of its council membership or the procedure it rules, unlike a subcommittee. It's open to those councillors with experience and the interest. It's flexible, and it's exactly what Councillor Holden implied we wanted. And it's also along the lines of Councillor Brunt. Let's make sure the contract works and let's enforce it. So we want the council to give us a clear and public steer on the work that we want this task group to do. As the motion is currently drafted, there's the implication that the subcommittee just looks at Veolia's performance against contract. That's one issue, but it's not the only one. There are three elements we want to bring real focus on with our amendment. First, the South London Waste Partnership could and should be an opportunity for officers to band together, bring collective bargaining power to bear and press Veolia for high quality service. So we need to ensure that qualified and professional staff with appropriate seniority manage these contracts. These officials need to have the skills and work across the boundaries and agree appropriate arrangements, ensuring Veolia just doesn't play one council off against the other. They will then give us the best chance of being able to exert greater pressure on the company to perform. And Madam Mayor, we need a way of checking this is happening. Secondly, councillors across the chamber are likely to have some idea of the specific problems residents have had and are having with wheelie bin deliveries. For those of us who represent wards with terrace houses and maisonettes, it's about storage space, about sharing bins with neighbours and recycling existing bins. These problems won't go away when the rollout is complete. The task group will be a space for residents to share those concerns, have them taken seriously and for recommendations to be made to improve process. Lastly, this year, I've seen a bit from the Conservatives about restoring the weekly collection of residual waste. A little oddly, this motion as currently drafted doesn't really touch on it. We know from our own surveys in 2015 and 2016 that around 80% of people were worried about fortnightly collections. And we know that if it's a realistic option to get rid of fortnightly collections, then we need to be able to be open and honest with residents about the cost and the process, what it might add to council tax, what other services would need to change. So we want an explicit focus on it, and that's what our amendment does. So, Madam Mayor, 3 things to make a better motion. We hope that you will all support the amendment and not stick with the status quo, as the other amendment proposes to do. Thank you.
The amendment is being formally seconded by Councillor Bailey.
Madam Mayor, I formally second this amendment.
If there are no further speakers, Councillor Morden, do you wish to use your right of reply?
Yes, very briefly, Madam Mayor. Yes, I must admit I was trying to follow everything Councillor Peckcroft was saying, and his motion, there's a lot of aspects that we like the look of. But I thought my speech, outlined what our intention was for this new panel, subcommittee, task group, whatever you want to call it. I don't think there's any need to change our motion, so we won't be voting in favour of their amendment. We would just prefer if they just agree with our motion up front. Yeah, basically that's what I reckon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now call for a vote on the first amendment first. Can I have a show of hands in favour? All those against? Those not voting? The amendment is lost. 5 for, 32 against, 19 not voting. We now move to the second amendment. Councillor Brunt, to move.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's quite an odd situation to be rising when everyone's talking about working together and we get 3 different votes from 3 different parties, but I hope that I can bring us together on this and move us forward. I've heard some interesting arguments about bringing about a board that would review this contract, that would invite members of the public, invite perhaps other experts to do it, hold me to account and hopefully not heckle me, but I can cope with heckling as well, but I think it's more productive if you're not heckled. But that's what scrutiny is about. We have a scrutiny, Sustainable Community Scrutiny Panel. We have a task force that looks at financial management, and there's now going to be a task group work from the scrutiny panel looking at single-use plastic. That will be very productive. It will be people working together, councillors working together, residents and officers working together. That's the way that I like to move things forward. We're all elected to actually make our communities better and serve our fellow residents. We all want cleaner streets, we all want more recycling, I would hope, and we want our refuse collected safely and reliably. And all of this has to be done within a budget. That's our challenge. We know that local authorities are undervalued by this government. They're prepared to send their own local authorities to the wall and hang them out to dry. Northamptonshire being the first of probably many that will be struggling under this government. This government that's driven by an austerity agenda and distracted by Brexit. A government led by a former chair of education and deputy leader of the Conservative group here on this council. Someone who seems to have lost her way as a community politician, having got national office. Under the stewardship of Labour, this will not happen in Merton. We will work to improve the service we get from Veolia. We'll work to improve the recycling rates, which are not good enough. I won't go through the figures I gave earlier, but that was just on food. But already we're hearing from Sutton, again at the South London West Partnership, which is a collaborative group of 4 boroughs. I'm sorry for the Tories, there's no Tory borough in there anymore, but there's 2 Liberal and 2 Labour boroughs working together for the benefit of their residents. But we heard that Sutton is exceeding 50% recycling, and that's 18 months after a very stormy start because they went for a big bang approach, which we are not doing. So over 50%. We heard the Tidy Britain group some years ago did a study at the end of the Tories' reign here in 2010, which said that the 50% of the debris on our streets is due to our refuse collecting methodology. Basically, black sacks. That's the problem. That's what leads to a lot of the litter and rubbish on the streets. So what do we do about that? We work together to try and improve it. I've been out with the 3 client officers who manage the contract with Veolia and Ida Verdi. I've been out with an enforcement officer seeing how the fly tipping is tackled. And that is the way that we're going to improve this borough, working collaboratively and pushing Veolia to the limit on that. I agree with the green sack stuff. We don't need the committee to tell us that Veolia are failing on that. I've already been talking to Scott Edgell, the manager here, about how can we improve that, have a more reliable way of collecting the green sacks. And I do report it as fly tipping. If it's more than a day there, I do it on the app, on the computer, say, yes, I know who's left it there, it's been there more than 24 hours, and it's a fly tip. So I report it just as that. And that's what we should be doing. We need to report it, not just moan about it and stir up the public to protest about it, because actually we just want an outcome. We want better streets. Thank you.
Thank you. The amendment has been seconded by Councillor Delaney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's true to say that all of us have complaints about Veolia. We know that they are not living up to their expectations and the contract with them stipulated. But I can tell you that some people are noticing that they are improving. Minor improvements, but it's happening. Just recently in Gravy Ward, Council Gravy Ward, 8 fly tips were reported in one day. And the following day I drove around and 7 were picked up. Couldn't believe it, but 7 were picked up. Some people are also reporting cleaner streets around shopping area, and they're saying sweepers are coming and sweeping up and they're picking up things. But I think we ought to remind ourselves or ask ourselves, why Veolia? Why did we have to have Veolia, for that matter, any private contractor? Because of the reduction in government grant to local authorities, and in this case, in Merton's case, by about £7 million, that has forced us to make savings in order to provide funds for other essential services such as elderly care. If there were no cuts to grant, we would not need Veolia and there would be no complaints. Savings by contracting out street cleaning to Veolia is somewhere in the region of £1.6 million in the first year. And that is due to increase year on year for the 2 or 3 years. It does seem to me, Madam Mayor, that Veolia really wasn't prepared for the volume and frequency of fly tipping in certain areas of the borough. They didn't know what was happening. They didn't know it would happen to them at all. Now that they're aware of it, and we as a borough are constantly complaining, asking them to improve their services, they are noticeably improving under their obligation and under the contract. Slow, minor improvements, but it's happening. And we ought to give them all the support that is necessary for them to do the job properly. Thank you.
If there are no further speakers, Councillor Morden, do you wish to use your right of reply?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, we won't be back in the Labour amendment tonight. It's full of holes. We don't like it. We're going to vote against them. The last speaker just claimed there are improvements. Well, nobody on this side has seen any improvements. In fact, it's been getting worse over the summer. Some of the targets have never been met since we only have had the contract. Street cleaning has been terrible throughout. Mist bins are being target almost every single month. They seem to be completely inept. which is why we're not the only ones saying that, which is why we wanted to have a panel, something separate that was open to the public, so they can contribute. Whereas other panels like Sustainable Communities one quite often have been used to stop the public from asking questions. In fact, sometimes even our own councillors have been stopped by the Labour administration from asking questions. So that's why we wanted a fair, honest, open board. We thought council members would like it because it would he could wash his hands of the whole problem and then claim he listened. There was a time once upon a time when the London Library, for instance, was going to be up for foreclosure. He then, after public outcry, wrote in and saved it. You could do the same here. You could write in on the day, listen to this board or task group, whatever it may be, and listen to recommendations and save the day. Then you'll be very popular. So I'm giving you a good chance to become popular. I don't know why I have to. I don't know why I have to keep doing that. I'm giving you a gift every meeting. So basically, we're going to vote against it, and yeah, that's all I've got to say on it.
Thank you. I will now call for a vote on the second amendment. Can I have a show of hands in favour? All those against? Those not voting? Thank you. The amendment is carried. 35 for, 21 against, and no non-voters. I now call on a vote on the substantive motion as amended. Can I have a show of hands in favour? Show of hands. All those against? Not voting. The motion as amended is carried. 35 for, 16 against, 5 not voting. We now consider the second strategic theme motion. Councillor Bukhari, please present this motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As Councillor Fairclough has already mentioned, tonight's strategic theme report just doesn't offer enough vision in relation to transport and accessibility at stations. This motion should help. It's a not fancy motion, it's not a party political motion. Meaningful progress and real action is what's needed. It's a simple motion. It calls on the Cabinet to look at the problems of accessibility to our local stations and to think about how we could help reduce these problems. Madam Mayor, this is a borough-wide issue, but I want to talk about how the residents of West Barnes are affected to show how serious this problem is. About 4.5 million rail journeys start from Rains Park Station a year, which is a huge number. Yet, if you are coming to Rains Park from Waterloo or from Wimbledon, you can't get out of the station without using the steps. So, if, like a parent like myself and many people here who have pushchairs, you will struggle. If you have mobility issues or problems, you will struggle. And your life will be impacted in a serious way. And we just think this is simply not good enough. At the end of the day, we need to have better access to our stations. At the other end of West Barnes is Motzer Park Station, and some of you may be familiar with Motzer Park Station. There's a central platform, steps are going up and down from either side. A resident showed me some photos from the 1930s. You cannot see the difference. It's practically the same. So quite frankly, those stairs are dangerous for many of us here. Independence is so important to people. To control one's life is a key part of that. And not having to make extra special arrangements just to get home, to work, to the shops is a simple thing, but it's key. That is why thousands of people have signed our petition about this. They've written letters to the railway companies and the government, and now we need to make sure that our council is behind us on this, take some real practical steps, make things better. It's a simple motion, a motion looking for solutions to a problem. So do the simple thing and support it. Thank you.
This has been seconded by Councillor Cllr.
I formally second it and will reserve my right to speak.
We have an amendment. Councillor Chung to move.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I actually go into what I substantively want to say, I need to clarify a couple of points for the benefit of members in the Chamber. This amendment is predicated by the social model of disability. I make that point because many people still don't understand what that is. And if you don't understand it, you can't actually follow it. You can't support it. So I'll urge you, when you leave the council tonight, to spend a few moments trying to get your head around the social model of disability. Right? I'm not accusing anyone of this, I'm just inviting you to do so. The other thing is that the motion before us talks about step-free, and of course that is an essential element of accessibility. But accessibility is much more than step-free. I use the transport system quite extensively, and they have complicated step arrangements, but I still am able to get from the road to the train and back up onto the road, because there are other devices in place. That, for example, there are lifts. Some of these antiquated buildings, they weren't built with disabled people. In those days, disabled people didn't exist. They were in institutions locked away. Right? And some of these stations are no longer able to be accommodated. It'll cost so much money that it's probably best to knock it down and start again. We're talking, for example, of College Wood. I don't have to go anywhere near there if I want to go on the ground, because I can't get down. I just can't. They can't even put in a lift. It costs so much to put in a lift, it's just not worth it. Brings me to the other point. If you make changes for disabled people, you make changes for everyone. So why aren't we actually moving faster in trying to make these changes happen? Right? Because we actually focus our attention on disabled people rather than focusing attention on us all as users of the service, which is a sad reflection on where we are at the moment. Things are changing, but they're changing, they're not changing fast enough, at least not for me. This motion before us doesn't talk about speeding up these changes. What we need to do is to speed up the changes. We need to target these changes, because you can't change everything all at once. You've got to be strategic. You've got to decide you're going to change point. You're going to change this, then you're going to go to that, and then you're going to go to that. We don't have any control over this. It's actually Transport for London and the Network Rail that actually hold the purse string on this. What we have to do is bring pressure to bear on these agencies, these institutions, to ensure that this happens. And so I actually want to commend this amendment to the Chamber, and I hope the little that I've been able to say in the short time that I've had, that you will all actually see that it actually bears a lot of relevance, importance and significance for us moving forward. It's not something as the Councillor rightly said, where we have political divisions. This here should be supported by all of us in this chamber tonight. think you'd be embarrassing yourself if you don't.
Thank you, Councillor. The amendment is being seconded by Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to be supporting this amendment. Accessibility, as Councillor Chung has already said, is for everyone. It is vitally important. I use the underground frequently because I live all the way from Merton to go to Barnet to do work in the court. I have to take the steps, there are no lifts there, and there are other places. So therefore it's a priority that for this council to fight for everyone who lives and works in Merton to be able to get around. The elderly, the disabled, parents and grandparents with buggies, no one should be left behind. And I'm a grandparent with 2 little ones. I know what it's like if you're trying to get both of them up the stairs. So I really am going to be supporting this amendment. We welcome the Mayor of London's commitment to make Crossway 2 100% step-free, and also that at long last, Wimbledon Park Tube will be getting help from Civic to go step-free, but this is not enough. As we know, the responsibility to fund and provide step-free access at station lies with the Department for Transport and TfL and Network Rail. But we as a council must fight to highlight accessibility issues in Merton to these bodies, and so that our residents get the access to transport that they need and deserve. And I mean all residents, not about people with disabilities. Plus disability, as a nurse I know, disability is not always seen. And so you might think it's somebody in a wheelchair or cannot walk, but it's a lot more than that. We know our residents and their needs best, so it's really important that we use that knowledge to help the Mayor of London identify where the areas of greatest needs are. Real people on the ground, living and working in Merton, travelling through London. I'm proud to support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We Merton Conservatives have always been advocating for step-free access and accessibility at stations. In particular, over the years, our ward colleagues in places such as West Barnes under Quilliam Barlow, along with Stephen Hammond, the Conservative Member of Parliament for London, have consistently lobbied TfL, Mayor of London and people like Network Rail for improvements. It is a shame that Network Rail, South Western Railways, or they were then known as South West Trains, and TfL have used the old excuse about Crossrail 2 to defer such future works. In London Park, our current councillors, Morton, Howard and Weston, and previous councillors, including Linda Taylor, have successfully lobbied TfL for a lift to be installed at London Park Tube Station. Now, the Mayor of London is known for breaking his promises. So is Civic a mayor who can or can't? Will he keep his promise here in London Park? We also think that another kind of station should be step-free and accessible, that being police stations. In good news yesterday, I don't know if you've seen it, it's all over Twitter, and I've got a news piece here, Havering Council have announced that they're buying the police station, Hornchurch, in their council area, and the Mayor of London's MOPAC have agreed to this. So we could do the same here to save London police station. So, Madam Mayor, tonight we are actually in support of the lift motion if it was got the chance to go to a vote, but I suspect the amendment will go first. I'm also in support of the amendment, which is something we don't hear very often from us. So, yeah, there we go, that's all I'll say on that one.
Sorry, can I just remind people in the chamber to respect the speakers, please? Councillor Cllr, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, on that point, can I just emphasise this is a serious issue, and if you say let's respect the speakers. Councillor McCabe and Councillor Alan Reid are just scoffing through Councillor Bakara's speech. Why not listen, at least, rather than scoff makes silly faces. It does you no credit and undermines this important issue. I commend Councillor Chung and Councillor Fraser on much of their speech. I thought much of your speech I agree with. What you are really saying is we need to address this issue. We're not addressing this issue by just kicking it a long touch. The amendment isn't a terrible amendment, but it simply delays what needs to be done. We have a recent history in this council of overlooking issues for disabled people. We saw that with the Changing Places controversy, where Councillor Draper got much criticism. I want to commend him, actually. He was criticised by many, but I want to commend him, firstly, for his personal account of his family circumstances, which I found moving and humbling, and also for the grace with which he addressed the fact that a mistake had been made and they needed to do something, as was done with the Changing Places controversy. We know this is an issue. We all know this is an issue. It's gone on and on and on. Scrutiny has a lot on its plate. Rather than picking this off to scrutiny, why don't we now do what we know needs to be done? The Cabinet sit down and set out what the issues are, what we can do, and where we need other help. We can't just say it's all someone else's fault. Let's please work now to address this, rather than just leaving it to Crossrail 2. Let's start addressing it now. And I think really, Councillor Chung and Councillor Fraser, what you argued, agreed with what we are saying. Thank you.
Excuse me. There are no further speakers. Councillor Pecuniary, do you wish to use your right to reply?
Very simply, I totally agree with everything that you've said, which is why I don't understand the need for the amendment that you're proposing, because we do need to speed things up. We can't let this carry on. This is not a situation that anyone wants anymore. I want to just reiterate what Councillor Carrier said. There are no need for any more delays, so I would suggest that we just back the motion as it is. Thank you.
I will now call for a vote on the amendment first. Can I have a show of hands in favour? All those against? Those not voting? The amendment is carried. 51 for, 5 against, no votes. I now call for a vote on the substantive motion as amended. Can I have a show of hands? It's agreed. Now that the debate is finished, we move to vote on the substantive report. Is the report agreed, or would you like a vote? Item 8, Rains Park Community Forum. Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the meeting, we had a presentation from Thames Water, who reported on investigations and actions on flooding. There was a discussion on the need for the repair of fencing around Rains Park Station and plans about the Rains Park Festival. Madam Mayor, I move the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Wimbledon Community Forum.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The June meeting of the Wimbledon Community Forum had presentations on the police and from Viola, who came and attended our meeting, and on street cleaning, and from Love Wimbledon. And I'm happy to move the report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I would like to invite the Chief Executive to explain the process for considering the following two motions.
It's nothing too exciting, I'm afraid. So we have two motions which are
substantially the same on the Brexit issue, and the Mayor has agreed to a request to have a single debate, although there are two motions. So the way that we will proceed is the first motion will be moved and seconded, and then we'll move straight into the debate, but it will debate the whole issue. We can't have two motions live at the same time, because otherwise there's then confusion about what we're voting on at any given point. So at the end of the debate, once we've taken the vote, the second motion will be formally moved and seconded, but there won't then be a subsequent debate. So we'll have the full debate after the first item has been moved and seconded, and then a formal moving and seconding of the second motion, which means that the second Brexit motion is moved forward ahead of what is formally on your order paper of the second motion, which is the Conservative motion in relation to anti-Semitism.
Councillor McGrath, please move the motion.
Madam Mayor, the 23rd of June 2016 was a bad day for our country and for our borough, but there were some good things about it. And one of the good things was to see people from all parties working together, Tories, Labour, Greens, Lib Dems, and people not affiliated with any party, and with both of our MPs all working for the common good on the same side. And it's in the spirit of that non-partisanship that I'm proposing this motion this evening. I could talk about how the various lies of the Leave campaign have been exposed. I could talk about the fines in the Electoral Commission. I could talk about the revelations about the use of social media to stir up bigotry. But I suspect most members know about that already. What strikes me most about the Leave campaign is their complete lack of any plan for what they wanted to do when they won. And that's something that's continued even up to last weekend, when we saw a failure to publish a plan from the hardcore Leavers. The motion talks about the cost to our economy, and last week I was particularly struck by the news that Panasonic is moving its European headquarters from Britain to Amsterdam. I suspect, it's a small number of jobs initially, but I suspect it will be the first of many Japanese companies to move their headquarters overseas, of course along with other foreign investors. As the economic costs and the problems become clearer, we can see a growing demand for a people's vote. Particularly struck me as how bodies involved in the National Health Service, the BMA, the Royal College of Midwives, the Royal College of Nurses, have all supported a people's vote because they know two things, I think. One of which is that many thousands of workers in the NHS come from the EU, and secondly that we need a strong economy to carry on financing the EU, financing the NHS. It's not just about the economy. One of the most striking conversations I had during the referendum was at a street stall that we Lib Dems had outside Morden station, and it was with an Italian lady who told me that she'd been living here for 7 years, that she and her husband had good jobs, their son was in a good school, and she was desperately worried about what would happen if the vote went the wrong way. And that's a concern I know that the many thousands and thousands of residents we have in Merton from the EU are concerned about still, and particularly with the prospect of a no-deal Brexit. So it's vital that the scrutiny process continues to look at how we can support those EU citizens in Merton. And it's also important to make sure that we update the risk register to take account of very real risks and problems that Brexit, particularly a hard Brexit, but any sort of Brexit will pose for Merton. But the only way we can stop Brexit is by people being allowed to change their minds, and that means a vote in the House of Commons. Siobhan McDonough has said that she supports a people's vote, and Stephen Hammond has recently said that he remains open to the arguments for another referendum. And I'm pleased to see there's another motion for people's vote, which of course we'll be supporting. So I didn't really expect to make my maiden speech praising one Labour MP and asking for a letter to be sent to a Conservative MP. But a people's vote is controversial, it's bold, but as the great Merton resident, Lord Nelson, said, the measure may be thought bold, but I'm of the opinion that the boldest are the safest. So I ask people to support this motion.
This, I believe, has been seconded by Councillor Cllr.
I formally second and reserve my right, Madam Mayor.
Following have indicated their wish to speak. Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I confirm that we will be supporting the Lib Dem motion, and I congratulate them on a very good maiden speech. We simply observe that the problem with long motions is that they risk whataboutery, what they don't include, and why they haven't made other good points. So this is actually one of those occasions where we would have recommended that the more comprehensive motion is actually the shorter one. We support the campaign for a people's vote, end of. Nothing more needs to be said. I would also add a little bit of advice that the Liberal Democrats also want to give the impression that they want to work across parties. Obviously anyone with any experience often knows this is usually not always the case, and they have been tweeting furiously partisan tweets throughout the evening. But in case it is real, I would simply say that if they really want to achieve a people's vote, it would be a mistake to single out or make digs at a potential ally. The MP for Wimbledon is certainly no friend of ours, but in fairness he has been braver than most Conservatives in opposing Brexit. So if there are focuses about to go to print chastising him over the people's vote, I think that would probably make it less likely than more that he'll support this course in the future. That's just something for colleagues to consider. Here in Merton, it is true that most people were Remainers all along and voted to be part of the European project in the second referendum of 2016, as well as the first in 1975. However, when the rest of the country narrowly voted to leave 2 years ago, we went along with it, waiting for the government to negotiate the deal other voters wanted, to take back control, to protect British jobs, and to guarantee £350 million for our NHS. And yet here we sit, only 6 months before Brexit comes to pass, and it is increasingly clear none of this will happen. Instead of having control by being part of negotiating teams working out trade deals with the rest of the world, we will have to accept trading terms set by faceless bureaucrats at the WTO in Switzerland. Instead of protecting jobs, more and more employers are making it clear they will be lost. Jaguar Land Rover just yesterday. And instead of a proud, well-resourced NHS, it has never been more in need of funds. And we are being told we will need to stockpile medicines because they won't be available anymore. That's not taking back control. Here in Merton, we need to take action, and we have begun to take action. The leader has made dealing Brexit a cabinet responsibility under me, and I have asked senior officers to report on its implications for the borough. There has never been so much uncertainty about the council's finances, and that is largely because of Brexit. We still can't know how many businesses will move away, how many NHS staff or carers will leave, or what the impact will be on the economy, inflation, or even house prices. When we have a better idea what Brexit means and what the deal is, we might have a better idea, but it doesn't look good. However, when we know, it's only fair that the people of Merton should be asked to consider whether the price is too high. When we know the deal, let the people decide. Deal or no deal, they're in charge. Let the people of Merton and the rest of the country decide. I move our motion and support theirs.
Councillor Lanning.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And a reminder that this is Councillor Lanning's maiden speech.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Madam Mayor, it gives me great pleasure to make my maiden speech in seconding this motion. For right now, there can be no more important topic than Brexit. Something that will not only impact the residents that I'm proud to represent in Cricket Green, the residents right across this borough and indeed this country. I've spent my whole life in Merton, Madam Mayor, and I'm proud to now represent the community in this chamber. But the community I represent is made up not just of British citizens, but of people who have moved to this country for work, to study, and for their families. People like the Spanish national who taught me at the Ursuline, the German national who treated me at St Helier, or the Polish national who is my local PCSO. They, and thousands like them, play an integral part in making Merton the community that it is, Madam Mayor. And if they hadn't come to Britain, we would be poorer for it. Madam Mayor, as we reflect 2 years after the referendum result, the facts are clear. Without a parliamentary majority for the Chequers plan, and with strong opposition from Michel Barnier, Remainers and hardline Brexiteers, the government is paralysed, in the midst of a crisis entirely of its own making. With only weeks to go before a deal has to be agreed with the EU, the country is as polarised as ever. While I voted to remain in the EU because as a worker, consumer and NHS patient, I do believe we would be better off. I also believe that as Democrats we should respect the referendum result. But democracy has to be more than just casting a vote. The referendum result didn't give the government a mandate to ignore the concerns of 16 million voters, and it didn't tell us what Brexit would mean for our economy, our workforce or our health service, to name but 3. You only have to look at the reasons that people give for voting to leave: immigration, sovereignty, the European Court of Justice, to know that there was no consensus on what post-Brexit Britain would look like. Leaving the EU and the terms on which we leave are two fundamentally different things, which is why, Madam Mayor, the public should have a vote on the terms of our exit. Because, Madam Mayor, as I speak tonight, there are 2 options on the table. A deal which would abolish all trade links with the European Union, stockpile medicines and see residents losing their rights. Or a deal which enables us to continue working with the EU, secures rights for EU and British citizens, and allows us to continue trading freely with member states. Madam Mayor, we are at a crossroads, and the path we take will determine our future over the next generation. I want to share just one example of what a hard or no-deal Brexit could mean for this country. In my profession, I speak to doctors, scientists and manufacturers about the risks of Brexit. And while we know the NHS won't receive the promised £350 million per week, it's far more alarming to hear that Britain's biggest pharmaceutical company has already diverted £70 million from cancer drug development to contingency planning. A no-deal Brexit will have a huge impact on patients because medicine supply will be disrupted. More than 400,000 patients in the UK need access to insulin, but we only manufacture another 2,000 and will not be able to import any more in the short term. Madam Mayor, Parliament has a duty to consider the well-being of the people. No one voted for higher prices, poorer healthcare, or to lose their jobs. But there's a risk that is what will be delivered without a people's vote, hurting most those in our society who have the least. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I do indeed commend colleagues for their maiden speeches tonight. For this is the most fundamental and grappling decision in a generation or more. Passions are clearly running high, and there are numerous issues which cut across all parties and indeed all groups in this chamber. Whether each of us voted to leave or to remain, there was a mandate given to negotiate a withdrawal. And that's a fact, whether we liked it or not. These discussions are always going to be complex and difficult, and so, Madam Mayor, they have proven. That was inevitable and cannot, or at least should not, be a surprise to anyone here tonight. We believe these negotiations must be allowed to conclude or to fail, and if they conclude, then there will be an agreement to review and to debate, and that is the time to decide what is best for our borough and best for our community. To decide in advance seems premature. There will be many reasonable arguments tonight for a rethink or for a second vote, but the time to decide that is not now, Madam Mayor. It is when we know what's on offer and what the people of Merton face. We will listen carefully tonight, and some in my group have great sympathy with what has been said. Others won't, but we are united on this side of the chamber in our determination to let the Prime Minister of our country win the best deal possible, and then, and only then, to decide as a community what should come next and whether a debate or a further vote is in the best interests of our residents. Madam Mayor, it is for this reason that we will neither support nor oppose the Lib Dem or Labour motions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Williams?
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm glad that both Labour and the Lib Dems brought similar motions because it highlights their weaknesses. You can count on one hand, probably on one finger, the number of notices of motion that Labour have put down in the last 4 years, but here it is. A statement not currently supported by the real Labour Party, which only serves to highlight that Merton Labour are not real Labour. Councillor Allison has changed his Twitter description from being anti-Corbyn to being anti-Corbyn by implication. But that's not his only manipulative use of words. In this chamber, he routinely blames Brexit for the state of the council's finances, and has done so again tonight. Unlike Councillor Allison, I live in my ward, and 72.8% of us voted to remain. If he'd spent a little bit more time in Lavender, perhaps the Remain vote there of 56.53% might have been higher. But clearly, Merton Labour care nothing for Lower Morden, Ravensbury and St Helier, who voted out. As we know, whenever Merton Labour think they're getting the wrong answer, they're prepared to use their party's resources and council taxpayers' money to skew the result of a consultation, as they did on the adult care supplement. And then we have the Lib Dems, who think they've come to this chamber to represent their party's national policies. I suspect it's because Vince Cable and other Lib Dem MPs failed to turn up for crucial parliamentary votes. That is where votes on Brexit matter. Instead, tonight, they're going to make the same mistake they made last time they held West Farms and vote with Labour again and again, only to prove that a vote for them in Merton is purposeless. Our streets are filthy. The streetscape is being changed beyond recognition by a variety of plastic boxes, as it has been in Lib Dem Sutton. The administration have just part demolished and given away a precious community asset, but Lib Dems want to focus on national issues. There has been a post-referendum general election, and Parliament is the best place to deal with this. As Merton councillors, their responsibility is to hold this administration to account. So let Parliament get on with its job, and you get on with your job here.
Councillor Ward.
So thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, in my first speech, I'd like to thank the people of Colliers for electing Councillor Oswald, Councillor Cooper Marbitt and myself in May. It's a great honour and privilege to represent the ward. Reflecting on what Councillor Lanning said, the EU citizens of Colliers and across Merton are very valuable, and from my wife Rachel and I's point of view, we were married by a Merton Council employee, a Polish Merton Council employee who was registered at our wedding here, so particularly thankful to that EU member of staff. I'm particularly pleased that Colliers Wood is represented in Parliament by Siobhan McDonough, and as Siobhan is a Colliers Wood resident, I'm pleased to that I now have the opportunity as one of our residents of Colliers Wood to represent her here. And as has been mentioned, she is a full supporter of the People's Vote campaign. As has been mentioned as well, the other MP for the Borough of Merton, Stephen Hammond, although not fully yet, hopefully supporting the campaign, is at least pledging to vote against a full, hard, cliff edge, no-deal Brexit. I'm commenting of that, and hopefully he'll take the extra step to support this campaign. On the issue itself, much of the debate since the referendum more than 2 years ago and since has been about the economics of and trade and our relationships with the EU. I'd like to talk more really about the social impact of our membership of the EU. Recently, when visiting the main square in Ljubljana in Slovenia, we walked past a group of teenage girls tapping on their phones, chatting, giggling, doing all the kind of things that teenage girls do, wherever in Europe they live. Had you not been able to hear the language they were talking, they could be teenage girls outside Central Shopping Centre in Wimbledon. They wear the same fashions, they listen to the same music, they watch the same movies, and they have the same dreams and aspirations for their future, in education, in employment, and in their enjoyment of the world around them. By leaving the EU, we will be denying our young people those same aspirations to move across Europe if they want to study or work, or just for pleasure to enjoy themselves across the continent, and I don't believe we should take that away. Also, recently I visited Munich in Germany happened to be the day of the German Cup final. I found a bar to join Bayern Munich fans in watching their team in the final. Very enjoyable afternoon. If you compare that scene to a bar near here last May when Fulham were in the playoff final, I would challenge you to look from the bar in London to the bar in Germany, half a continent away and back, and not see that the chanting and the enjoyment of football and the way people interact is exactly the same in Germany and here. Only the language and the colours of the football shirts were different. Especially, it was similar because both teams went on to win those games. It's for those reasons that it's preposterous to state that somehow English people, British people are so different from our European counterparts. We have so much more in common than is so different, than divides us, and therefore we should give the people the chance to reconsider their decision, change their mind with the facts in front of them we have now, and allow the people's vote on the future of our relationship with the EU. Thank you.
Councillor Cllr, do you wish to speak?
Very briefly, Madam Mayor. Can I commend Councillor Lanning and Councillor Ward on their excellent maiden speeches, and commend Councillor Allison on his speech, much which I agree with. Although, let me assure you, we're not chastising Stephen Hammond, we're trying to persuade him to do the right thing. As for Councillor Williams' speech, I just found it bizarre. He told Labour off for not doing as the National Leadership were doing, and the Lib Dems off for doing what the National Leadership were doing. Very odd. He knows he has a weak argument, so he shouted and blustered his way through it, but simply achieved nothing apart to prove how weak their position is. The Lib Dems have been calling for a people's vote since before the last general election, and we're glad the tide is turning. I'm very grateful to Labour councillors, Mitchell and Morden MP Siobhan McDonough, for joining us in calling for the final say, be it the Chequers charade, the limited Canadian free trade arrangement, the disaster of no deal, or none of the above, but rather a pivotal role as full members in the reform and renewal of the EU. Unfortunately, the Tory party is split asunder, as you all know. I know many of you sitting in this room tonight want a people's vote, and I'm persuaded by Chequers and appalled by the hardline Brexit zealots in your midst. I say to you now, it's the time to act on your convictions and vote with all of us tonight, both to reflect the wishes of Merton voters and to stiffen the resolve of Stephen Hammond, who hinted his support, but has yet to nail his colours to the mast. It will soon be too late. I read on the front page of the Times that your constituency party is being targeted by hardline Brexiteers. You need to act now to show your members, supporters and voters generally throughout Merton that you, like all of us, want people's vote and the chance to reverse this economically suicidal, backward-looking Brexit. I urge you to think again. Thank you.
There are no further speakers. Councillor McGrath, do you wish to use your right to reply?
Thank you. Very briefly, on the point raised by Councillor Allison about the length of our motion, I have to say the only reason we wrote a motion like that rather than the very simple one that the Labour group did, but when we had our initial training as councillors, we were told that motions had to, couldn't purely be about national issues and had to make some reference to local issues, so we didn't think it would actually get past the officers. On Councillor Morton's point, I'm sorry that she's not going to be able to vote for the motion, but I was very interested to hear her point about the time to make a decision on this is later on when the negotiations have been concluded. So I hope that she'll agree with me that if the negotiations are concluded with no deal or a bad deal, that we should call a special meeting of the council to consider the matter at that point, when we'll reach the point that she said.
Thank you. I will now call for a vote on the motion. Can I have a show of hands in favour? All those against? And those not voting? The motion is carried 37 for, none against, 19 not voting. So we now move on to Councillor Allison. Please formally move the motion.
Okay, I formally move and reserve my right.
This, I believe, being formally seconded by Councillor Lenning. Yes. I will now call for a vote on the motion. All those in favour? Those against? And those not voting? The motion is carried. 37 for, none against, 19 not voting. Item 11. Councillor Preston, please move the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, this is a simple motion and one which I hope will prove in no way controversial. Madam Mayor, the motion is that the Council should follow the example of countless other councils and countries and adopt in full the definition of anti-Semitism that has so helpfully been set out by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Madam Mayor, I hope it will prove helpful to you and everyone else in this chamber if I say something in brief about the alliance itself. The IHRA was founded in the 1990s by the former Prime Minister of Sweden with the support of President Clinton. It was founded as an intergovernmental organisation comprising dozens of countries across Europe and North and South America. Members include Hungary as well, Slovenia, Serbia, Turkey also, more recently. Madam Mayor, it's fair to say that the Alliance's founding principle has always been to ensure that the Holocaust is properly understood and remembered. Its goal was never anything to do with seeking to define anti-Semitism or preventing the discussion of the Israeli and Palestinian political situation, which I'm sure you'll agree, Madam Mayor, is an issue which everyone in this chamber would wish to see resolved. Indeed, Madam Mayor, when the Alliance adopted the working definition of anti-Semitism, it wasn't even the Alliance's own definition. the IHRA merely adopted the working definition that had been previously established by the European Union itself in the context of the EU seeking to set out fundamental rights on crime, justice, integration and tackling xenophobia. Madam Mayor, you may also be interested to know that the Remembrance Alliance's working definition has already been adopted by more than 130 councils across the UK, including most recently by Camden Council and by Bradford as well. The same definition has been adopted by our police forces as well, Madam Mayor, and by the judiciary. Madam Mayor, I hope you find this background very helpful, but in short, the IHRA's working definition should be quickly, readily accepted in full, and formally by this council in this chamber, Madam Mayor, by everybody, Madam Mayor. I therefore call upon the council in this chamber as a formal council motion to set out a record of adoption of the full definition of the IHRA, not in part, Madam Mayor, not ignoring the examples, not cutting out half the working definition, Madam Mayor, but in full, without caveats and without amendment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
This, I believe, is being seconded by Councillor Andrew Howard, and this is also a maiden speech.
It is, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Madam Mayor, I stand to second the motion that this Council adopt the full IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. This also being my maiden speech, please permit me to first say that it is a privilege to find myself in this chamber and to be able to serve Village Ward and the wider Merton community within which I have lived for 28 years, some 2/3 of my adult life, a figure that no doubt belies my otherwise youthful appearance. It is equally a privilege to stand here amongst valued colleagues, some also new to this chamber, but most with many years of valuable experience. To one in particular I owe the most in terms of my arrival here. I refer, of course, to my mentor in most, but very well, all matters, that being Councillor Janice Howard, now in her third term in Wimbledon Park Ward. I supported her and her colleagues' work throughout that time, therefore entertained no rose-tinted view of the work of a councillor and standing for that role myself. That said, I am happy to have been able to effect a number of successful interventions on behalf of village residents over the last 4 months. This motion is not about political differences, but I in any case would have no difficulty in also acknowledging the dedication and professionalism of a number of the councillors of other persuasions with whom I have so far come into contact. However, it would perhaps be invidious of me to name them. Safer that, unlike Mark Antony, I come neither to praise nor to beg. What does strike me as I look about this chamber is the diversity of origins and, I imagine, creeds, a diversity that reflects the diversity of the community we represent, of the community which looks to us for leadership by example. As councillors, therefore, we have to set and maintain the standards that we would have others follow, leaving no scope whatsoever for perceptions of equivocation in matters such as that presented to us in this motion. This motion is also personal to me. My paternal grandmother was one Edith Edinger, the original pronunciation of which would have been closer to Edith Ediger. She was of a Jewish family with strong ties to the significant Jewish community in Frankfurt. Her own family had migrated to London in the late 19th century, long before Nazism was even thought of, but at a time when anti-Semitism took more subtle and insidious forms, much like the time in which we perhaps find ourselves now, or at least one to which we seem to be in danger of returning. I stand here as evidence of that family branch's endurance, but those that remained in Germany did not fare well after the Nazis came to power in 1933. My cousins, the Eberstadts, made the hard but wise decision to come to England in 1935, and chance, perhaps destiny, has made those of my generation our near neighbours in Wimbledon Park. Our other cousins, such as the Flersheims and the Wertheims, sought safety closer to home in the Netherlands and Belgium. But sadly, those became temporary refugees at best, and many of them ultimately perished due to privation and, of course, worse. I hope and pray, as do we all, that I am right in thinking that we will never return to such a time. Adopting the full IHRA definition will set down an important marker of who we are and what we in Merton stand for, a marker that will also signal the safety from discrimination of people of all origins and creeds within our community. I commend this motion to the Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It gives me great pleasure as a Cabinet Member for Equalities to move this amendment, and I speak as a lady who came to this country at the age of 9 years old and part of the Windrush generation. Merton is a diverse and inclusive borough, and we respect and celebrate the many different cultures and communities that live and work in the borough. Everyone has their part to play to create a harmonious society, and the council has more duty to do so. The council has a zero tolerance approach to prejudice or discrimination on any grounds whatsoever. When the government formally adopted the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's working definition of anti-Semitism in December 2016, making Britain one of the first countries to do so, during the following months, councils up and down the country followed suit, and the London Borough of Merton was no exception. We also adopted the definition by June 2017 and notified the Merton public by publicizing a link in our website standing by the government's announcement. The adoption was too late to be included in the enormous amount of work that went into the hate crime strategy 2017 to 2021 by Safer Merton, which is why I'm asking my cabinet colleagues to have the definition retrospectively included in the community groups and also across the borough, who were all involved in the drawing up of this vital strategy, which seeks to promote everyone who lives and works in Merton. All the community groups in Merton, including various ethnic minority groups, participated in this important venue. I am proud that Merton Council so quickly recognized the importance of adopting the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, and I look forward to seeing the definition included in the hate crime strategy. I'm pleased to hear from my colleagues on the other side that we are all singing from the same hymn sheet in this very important issue, and I do ask that everyone in this council chamber should support the amendment, because it is a very important thing which we all should agree, and there should be no political disagreement. I move the amendment.
The amendment secretary is Councillor Elizabeth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Today, not many people speak up for Greece, Madam Mayor. But there was a time during World War II when Greece was the only country to speak up for a decent Europe. Greece spoke through their Archbishop of Athens in 1941. During the Holocaust, Archbishop Damaskinos saved thousands of Greek Jews. The Church of Greece, under his leadership, condemned Hitler's plans for the country and instructed priests to renounce its position of support for the Jewish community in their sermons. A false baptismal certificate and new identity papers from the Greek Orthodox Church helped desperate fleeing Jews. Archbishop Damaskinos oversaw the creation of several thousand such certificates and provided more than 27,000 false identity papers to desperate Jews seeking protection from the Nazis. When all the official appeals to stop the deportations had failed, Archbishop Damaskinos spearheaded a direct appeal to the Germans, Madam Mayor. This came in the form of a very famous letter of protest. The letter read in part: "The Greek Orthodox Church and the academic world of Greek people protest against the persecution. In our national consciousness, all the children of Mother Greece are in separable unity. They are equal members of the national body, irrespective of religion. Our holy religion does not recognise superior or inferior qualities based on race or religion. As it is stated, there is neither Jew nor Greek, and thus condemns any attempt to discriminate or create racial or religious differences. Our common fate, both in days of glory and in periods of national misfortune, forged inseparable bonds between all Greek citizens, without exception, irrespective of race. The appeal of the Archbishop and his fellow Greeks is unique, and the letter remains unique in the annals of occupied Europe. Today, Madam Mayor, there is a similar document we all look to for a decent world. That document is the one that we're all talking about tonight. That document is from the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. The document that this council, this municipality, this local authority, this London Borough of Merton has rightly and proudly already adopted in full and will do its best to retrospectively apply it to our hate crime strategy. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
There are no further speakers. Councillor Gretton, do you wish to use your right to reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm grateful to both councillors for setting out their thoughts on this motion. For the record, however, Madam Mayor, let it be said that we verified and sought to check Councillor Lambert's statement that the IHRA definition had indeed been formally adopted in full in June 2017. Madam Mayor, there was no council meeting of this chamber in June 2017, nor was there a cabinet meeting. There had been a cabinet meeting scheduled, Madam Mayor, but it was cancelled in June 2017. There was no formal adoption process that anyone knew about in the council, Madam Mayor, when Councillor Lambert's claims to have actually formally adopted. In fact, when we checked with the council this afternoon, Madam Mayor, what records there were, we were informed that the definition that had been adopted in June 2017 or put on the website omitted half of the legal definition and omitted all of the examples. So in no sense to anyone, Madam Mayor, was it in any way a formal adoption of the full definition of the IHRA. But we do, nevertheless, Madam Mayor, wish to move forward, and we formally welcome the Councillor Lambert's and Councillor McCauley's welcoming and support for our full adoption today by way of a full council motion, and I hopefully now we'd be grateful for their support and therefore support the suggestion that the full IHRA definition be formally adopted further to our motion we have set out tonight. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I will now call for a vote on the amendment first. Can I have a show of hands in favour? Those against? Those not voting? Unanimously carried, 56-4. The motion is amended. The vote on the motion. Agreed. I now call for a vote on the substantive motion is amended. Yes. Sorry, you were still talking. Item 13, changes to membership out of committees and related matters. Councillor Ellison, will you formally move this report?
Formally moved.
I believe being formally seconded.
Bring to your attention that we wish to, on healthier communities and older people, we wish to reinstate Councillor Barlow following Councillor Holmes' resignation from that, and also on Standards and General Purposes Committee, Councillor Barlow again to be reinstated in place of Councillor McLean. These were not brought to your attention before this meeting.
Councillor Alison, could you formally second that? Second. Is that agreed? Agreed. Do we have any petitions?
Which has been submitted electronically earlier this evening. So what we present is just a print sheet for it. This is a certificate. So this is a petition of 1,425 Merton residents to form the Ashley Council to turn the pin collection to weekly and to not be forced to have meetings.
Madam Mayor, this is a petition from the residents of Dundon Ward who are petitioning against a particular planner.
If there are no further petitions, is that agreed? Agreed. Now we're on the final item. Can I ask Councillor Alan Bridges to put forward this strategic theme for the next ordinary meeting of the Council on the 21st of November?
Yes, Madam Mayor, that will be children and young people with a focus on bridging the gap.
Thank you. With no further business, I declare this meeting of the Council closed.